So there I am at Michigan thinking I'm going to be here a year and go back to my girlfriend, the Balkan dancer, who was so disappointed that I left for Michigan in the first place while she had to work full time as a nurse that she wasn't so happy with me. Then I'll go back to Wesleyan and do my Bulgarian stuff. I still had that in my mind, but suddenly Michigan looked pretty good. One, there was a gal starting a PhD there who I was going to be with for the rest of my life with any luck. And so far, so good. And then there's this guy he's running a performance group of Japanese music too. So Gina and I both joined it independently to play Japanese Kabuki theater music. So I'm plucking shamisen, playing drums, flute. By a few years later, I was teaching that group, in fact. I liked that. That led me to sit in on all these courses in ethnomusicology that were being taught there while I was teaching. So I was going to class on Southeast Asian music, which is why my secondary specialization has been Java in particular, and Thailand to some degree. They had one of the top people in the country doing Javanese Gamelan music research, and there was a performing group for that too. So here I was at Michigan playing Gamelan, playing Japanese traditional music, sitting in on the classes while teaching Japanese and linguistics. And frankly, the music was still the stuff I liked. Martin's attempt to think maybe I'll like linguistics didn't quite work out. I didn't hate it, I just didn't, it wasn't my path.
So how long did you teach that course, the linguistics?
Well, it was just the 1 year, and again it was, 2.5 terms, whatever. So it's another one of these 9 months, it was officially 10-month academic year, salary for 10 months. So yeah, I did that, and then what was I going to do? By then Wesleyan had offered me a place, and although Gina and I had really hit it off and I had a feeling we were the item for the future, I felt an obligation to go back to Wesleyan in Connecticut, near Yale, for 1 term at least. That's 700 miles from Michigan, these big country America. I still had this leftover girlfriend there, if you want to put it that way, to kind of tidy up things with. Up in her loft, she had some stuff. Some of my stuff was there, all my LPs. Somehow the Kingston Trio ones all disappeared, and I can't believe she took them. But never mind. Anyway, I had to go back and sort that out. So Gina stayed at Michigan to begin, having just done her 1 year of master's she had to do. She was now starting officially her PhD. I went off to Wesleyan, did a nice term there that was very useful. There were some good linguists there, not linguists, good ethnomusicology, famous people. There was one Japan guy teaching Japanese traditional music. There was a performance teacher, a Japanese gal who was teaching me the shamisen. So I learned a lot there, and a shakuhachi teacher. So I started doing that again, this bamboo flute that I didn't like before. Suddenly I saw it differently. Now I liked it more. I still can't play the damn thing, I still try. But I'll leave it to the others. There's plenty of good players around. So I went back and spent that 1 term away from Gina. Pretty quickly realized my old gal and I had no future anyway, and moved back to Michigan from January, gave up on that thought of doing ethno at Wesleyan and decided to do it in Michigan. And they also found money for me through the National Defense Foreign Language Program or something like that. May have changed by then, but the idea is certain studies of the cultures of certain countries that are past or future enemies or present ones, you get extra government funding. If I was just studying French literature, I wouldn't have got money. So that was luck. And Gina also had that kind of funding, that helped. So we weren't suffering for money. It doesn't make you rich, but we had scholarships. So we spent the next, got back there in January 73, January 74. So there was a year after to Japan. There was a year at Yale, a year teaching at Michigan, a term in Wesleyan, Connecticut Wesleyan University, and then back to Michigan from January 74.
As a student?
As a student.
What was it like being a student after
Oh, no problem, because I hadn't finished my PhD yet, so it wasn't like I was suddenly thrown down a few notches. I had dropped my linguistics PhD, so starting another one didn't seem to hurt. And that year of teaching, although I think I did a good job, I nonetheless didn't feel like I was a major league hot shit teacher, it wasn't like, if you ask me now, I taught whatever I taught, ethnomusicology at SOAS for like 22 years, and I've done a lot of lectures other places. That's really different. I wasn't there at that time, so I was just a beginner. So it was no problem starting over as a student. And I was a year behind Gina, in effect, and I always have been somehow. You know, she got the first job and all that after that. And yeah, back to Michigan, and suddenly Japan was much more interesting to me because of the music connection. And there was unlike Yale, where I was hanging around with linguists, there was a Japan, what did we call it? The Center for Japanese Studies at Michigan. It was a major social hub as well. There was one Japanese restaurant in town at that time. Gina actually worked there part-time. It was run by a guy named Jimmy Uchida, who was kind of second generation American, I think he was. And sometimes on their menu, if you ordered certain things, Gina would have to go to the Chinese restaurant around the corner to get the food and bring it back, you know. But she was trying hard to make money for herself as well, even though she had a lot of it already. But she's always had this sense of kind of moral and I don't know what other sense that you need to earn some money and save it. So she was working at this restaurant, and that was, for all I know, except for hanging around the Center of Japanese Studies, that was the only outside of the university, the only connection with Japan that was available, you know. Anyhow, so we did that music group for years, and once I discovered all these wonderful LPs, which is what we had in those days, and some cassettes of Japanese folk song. I'm a folkie, you know, I was doing all these American folk songs by then and performing a lot of that stuff too. And there was a Balkan band also in Michigan, which is good. There were a few people doing that. So some of my best friends outside of the Japan world were also playing Balkan music with me, and when we would do a lot of gigs. So I still had that as well. Anyway, back to Japan. So I found all these wonderful recordings with Japanese folk stuff and decided that was going to be my PhD thesis topic. Where is folk song in modern Japan? It's a country music, as it were, you know, rural music, but it's a lot of big city prose. I was learning enough mainly from reading at this point, because while I was in Japan, I never once saw a Japanese folk song singer live or any context for it. So this was quite an interesting experience. So somehow I was learning all this through books, and I don't know what else we had at those days. I had recordings, no videos or anything, and decided I will research folk song in the big cities and the countryside and how it's all going in modern Japan. And that's indeed what I did. And Gina was working on Japanese archaeology, and her story will be put in a different way, maybe in these kind of narratives, but the important thing then is our shared interest in music. We did a lot of this together. And I started teaching the people who were interested in Japanese music, who were studying with Professor Malm doing this Kabuki stuff. I started teaching them folk music as well. And our little group from the University of Michigan would go around to a lot of other universities and do performances of traditional Japanese music. It's not like we were great, you know, but they didn't have a lot of other options in the United States, and somehow these universities were happy to have us come, all these weird students, and perform for them on a so-so level. It's nothing like you'd hear in Japan, but never mind. And we do some lectures and explanations and demonstrations. I added folk song to that mix. And I even learned, this is kind of weird, but a few nights ago we did an Okinawa concert here with a visiting Okinawan musician from southern Japan. That's a different musical world in Japan. Different language, different instruments. Somebody asked me how I got into Okinawan music, and well, I heard a good recording of it at Michigan. And I learned about 3 pieces, Okinawan folk songs that I still perform a lot, off of those recordings. The thing is, I did not totally understand that the so-called sanshin, this 3-stringed instrument you have in Okinawa with snakeskin, was very different from the ones called the shamisen in mainland Japan, which descended from the Okinawan ones, which descended from a Chinese one, blah, blah, blah. I was getting the history, but I didn't have an Okinawan instrument, so I learned them on a Japanese instrument. And I couldn't figure out the tuning from the recordings. So to this day, whenever I play this piece called Tanchame, a wonderful fishing village song from Okinawa, I'm in Okinawa, I play it in a tuning that is not the one they use over there. So the first time I did it on a live TV New Year's Eve broadcast, because I was such the weird foreigner, I had to be on TV in Japan. That's another story to tell. But I was in the wrong tuning, you know, and they're trying to help me out, so they prepared, they tuned up the sanshin for me, handed it to me before I go on for this live recording. And I retuned it. And I said, what? I said, well, okay, I learned it from an LP. What can I tell you?